The American Federation of Government Employees, one of the largest federal workers' unions, has called to end the shutdown, saying it is time to put partisan politics beside us. Stop this. We have to wrap this up at any means.
So this is a union that specifically has members that are members of the federal workforce, government employees. They have about 800,000 federal workers that are members of this union. Now, this union, as traditionally unions are more progressive, they normally are more sided with Democrat politics. We saw that change in the last election. However, this one, the one that represents the bureaucrats and all the government workers, endorsed both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris publicly. So they were on record of the direction they wanted to go.
Certainly more liberal leaning. This isn't just a traditional union.
That's right. So this this labor union with 800,000 federal workers has put out a statement from their president, Everett Kelly, this morning that says it's past time to end this shutdown. In the preamble to this letter, it does try to throw blame at Congress in general instead of just the Democrats. However, here is their path forward. It says the path forward for Congress is clear. Reopen the government immediately under a clean, continuing resolution that allows continued debate on larger issues. Ensure back pay for every single employee who has served or been forced to stay home through no fault of their own. Work together on a bipartisan basis to address important policy matters like addressing rising cost and fixing a broken appropriations process. So they are calling, though, for the clean CR to pass and reopen the government. That is what the Democrats have voted against 12 times thus far. So this is, while they are couching it as Congress needs to do their job, and both sides have made their point, this is targeted at one party, the party that they align with, the party that they endorsed both presidential candidates in this last cycle. They are saying enough is enough. Reopen the government. Let's stop these political games.
Yeah, I think this is a big moment because this is a Democrat-led, really. I mean, they endorsed both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris last time around to be the president of the United States. So this is not talking about one that's maybe, some of these different ones that have now come out and support more Trump. Maybe these are ones that are not necessarily federal employees, the American Federation of Government Employees. Now, this is starting to hurt people for real. And I did have, I kind of overheard a conversation. I said that today. And I started realizing, if it is starting to kind of work its way into the American people's lives. And then, in their defense, they see the East Wing construction, that we know the funding of that. I'm talking about the optics. They see, of course, that your representatives still receiving their paychecks. And then you see the military having to go to food banks in Chicago. This is where the American people start to turn. And when you have something like the American Federation of Government Employees saying it's time to wrap it up, as Will said, these unions have more pressure or can put on more pressure than maybe you think.
That's right. They're very powerful. A lot of times they are very large donors to specific political parties. And then their membership as well, many times, is donating to that political party as well. And when you see someone who represents over 800,000 federal and D.C. government workers and writes things like this to ensure our skies are safe, our veterans receive care, our borders are protected, and our food is inspected. They come from every political background and every corner of this nation. What unites them is a simple belief that service to country is honorable work. Today, that belief is being tested. The Army nurse in San Antonio, the TSA officer in Atlanta, the USDA food safety inspector in Iowa, and hundreds of thousands more like them are being asked to keep our country running without the paychecks that keep their households afloat. When you think about this language, and once again, I want to point also that although the blame is being shared equally or thrown equally at Congress and in both parties by the president of this union, the solution that he is asking for is the one that the Republicans have put forward 12 times and been voted down in the Senate 12 times by the Democrat Party. He is calling for just reopening the government as well as getting away from this recurring tactic that is being used in D.C. to try and fight over policy by shutting down the government. And when you start to also think about how you're talking about hearing it now at the pharmacy, I was doing some reading and research over the weekend and starting to think about when it goes this long, where the trickle down happens. Because you think, okay, well, the private sector, the economy's doing fine. But then you start to think about ranchers or people that are starting projects like construction that require federal permits. Things of that nature. When it's been shut down that long, you could say, okay, a couple weeks, it just kicks down the road a little bit. Once they get back open, I'll get that move forward. But if you're a rancher and your product has to get approved by the FDA or by the USDA, or if you're a construction project that requires federal permits and leases that are not going through at this time, that starts to affect the private sector a lot more when you start to get into this 3 weeks, 1 month of being shut down. And that's what we're starting to see now. So last week when we talked to people, that most people would call in and say, I haven't seen it affect me yet. I'm not a government employee. Yeah. And you had the division where the government employees would call in and be like, I have worked for 2 decades at the federal government, and here's how this is affecting me. We have some calling in even now.
I think we should do it.
But I think that's where you're about to see the split and why this union breaking from party lines is a really big deal.
When you brought it up
because of this.
Yeah, when you brought up this morning, and I literally just walked out of overhearing a conversation that I never thought I would hear, it was that, oh, okay, things are real now, and we need to wake up here. Mike's calling in New York. Mike, go ahead on line 2.
Yeah, hi. I'm a long-time listener, first-time caller. This really affects my household because my wife, she went through the RIF program. She's been on 3 weeks now. We had to go to a food bank last week, and we saw some of her workers there, and the team is just, we're praying, and hopefully what you just said today could be a revelation about this American federal union worker. I know they're huge, 800,000, so I'm hoping that today there's a breakthrough because we're struggling. Our mortgage is tied up on this, and, it's really hitting home.
Yeah, Mike, I will say there are, obviously a lot of people are having those concerns. I know that some banks and some of the lenders make sure you look into it. I know I've logged in and they said, hey, if you're currently being affected by the shutdown, please let us know. There's things we can do to help you out. I don't know the details of that, but I am seeing those come up from time to time, so make sure you're paying attention to that as well, Mike. But yeah, it's got to be done. We've hit a breaking point. I can tell the American people. You can feel the change this morning. That is the difference. The fact that you could feel a change happen almost overnight is where we're at. And look, I don't take any of this for granted. I look at it and go, okay, what are we doing here? Where, outside of partisan politics, where do we end up and where we're going? And it does feel like, Will, we've been in a stalemate for such a long time. There is no progress. And when there's no progress, I think that's when the American people start to also lose any hope and just see politics. Because when no one will come to the table, when it is just, well, I'm not budging and I'm not budging, well, we're just going to make everyone suffer. That is where you start to feel a bit like a revolt is coming.
Well, and to the point of Mike, who said his wife works for the Internal Revenue Service, there was a story out this weekend. Some ran it as kind of like a fun interest piece, and others were like, this is how ridiculous it is. But that there's someone in D.C. that's an IRS employee that has started running a hot dog cart to make money in D.C., on the streets of D.C., and he's going in his suit. He's obviously making almost a marketing thing out of it, but that's what it's come to.
Probably end up making more money than working for the federal government.
In some cases, yes, he may be. But there's
always money in the hot dog stand.
We go back to this union statement. It says, both political parties have made their point, and there's still no clear end in sight. That's exactly what you're saying, is that the stalemate's there. They're not budging either way. And it is starting to trickle down and not just hurt federal government employees, which is awful, but also it's going to start seeping into the entire economy. Yeah. And then you're going to get real vocal people from all over the country on both sides of the aisle saying, knock it off.